Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel, welcome to my overview of Conscript. For those not across it, I do overviews on this channel. I have a look at the first 2 hours of a game because it's a Steam refund window. Steam says that you can make up your mind about whether you want to keep a game or not in that time period, and I would broadly agree. Generally speaking, 20 hours in, you're not going to change your mind about how you felt 2 hours in. So it's a broad strokes info video, short and punchy, keep it around 10 minutes, and then you can make up your mind on your own. So is it worth your time, worth your money? Yes, this is so good. I suppose arguably you have to sit in the niche that I sit in, that I enjoy, which is I love survival horror, especially Resident Evil. Much more interested in the mechanics that make those games tick. In case somehow you've never played a Resident Evil, or maybe you've never thought about it very critically, they're not really scary. In fact, there's almost an argument for whatever the core game loop of Resident Evil and survival horror games is, it's not actually a horror loop. But that's a whole other video and discussion that you can do, right? There's backwards and forwards, there's Metroidvania stuff, find the diamond key for the diamond door. There's light narrative, there's light puzzling, again, ammo and inventory management. All of the stuff that we love about Resident Evil kind of has horror secondary. And in a way, this game realizes it. This is not what you would call a traditional horror setting of a survival horror. I mean, hell, even the closest example in modernity to this game that I can think of would be Signalis, which is brilliant, by the way. You should play that. If you're interested in this, play Signalis 2. Play that while you wait for this to come out next week. But even that's kind of going for a very, horror, even eldritch sci-fi kind of vibe. This is World War I, just a poor lonely French soldier stuck in the trenches, kind of behind enemy lines. You could argue there's a horror to the scenario and the horror of war, but maybe you're seeing what I'm seeing. What I see here is something that has always been gameplay mechanics based around zombies and monsters and horror, transplanted into a different theme very successfully. And this actually could be a very important game. God, that sounds cringe as fuck saying that. But it could be the spearhead of taking these mechanics out of strictly horror-centric trappings. Just some food for thought, because I love this. And that's not to say I don't love the horror part of Resident Evil, but I've always wondered about that. Like, do I love Resident Evil because there's zombies biting people's faces? Or do I like it because of the suite of mechanics that work so well together? And it's definitely the latter for me. Anyway, so this is definitely a throwback to the survival horrors of yesteryear, like the original Resident Evils, bloody, Alone in the Dark, Silent Hill, that sort of thing. It is playing very close, not rip-off, and occasionally homage to a lot of the trappings that make the genre tick. The cheeky things are the save room music, and all the saves are ink-based. You'll have like a shopkeeper in a lot of the save rooms and a chest to share weapons. But again, at a certain point, it's like Souls-like are gonna Souls-like. These are the mechanics expected of this genre as well. I went into this relatively blind. I wasn't 100% sure what I was getting into, or even how good it would be as a survival horror game. Spoilers, it is. It's fantastic. It holds its own in the arena of what you would expect if you were me, coming off the back of loving every Resident Evil, loving the complex maps, the back and forth, spade key for spade door, all this nonsense. This has got it. Absolutely. The game opens kind of reminiscent of the Resident Evil 2 opening, sort of a bit more of an action scene, city on fire. In this, it's more moving around the trenches. You're trying to find your brother. You're just some random French trooper, and you've sort of got big brother syndrome, trying to look out for him and look after him. That's the main impetus behind the story, which is cool. It's not shooting for the moon, trying to do some grand, spectacular conspiracy theory, or at least it doesn't seem to be so far. It's just some dude trying to survive in the trenches. And so yeah, it opens up with a bit more action and bombastic, a lot of troopers fighting on the front lines, serves as an intro, but you're quickly kind of, knocked unconscious, the trench is taken by the Germans, and you're the last man left behind in this complex trench network that is patrolled by Germans everywhere. So it's actually a brilliant setup for survival horror in this setting. The thing that I was kind of skeptical going into this was, how are you going to turn, World War I trenches into kind of interesting biomes, maps, things to do? Maybe you can see it in the footage, but yeah, it's all really starting to open up for me now. All the back trench areas and little rooms, and it's so well realized. I couldn't see it, but now that I do see it, I couldn't believe it could be done any other way. It's complex in the right way. It's gamified in the right way. You know, recently I found a lighter and I've had to put very specific fuel into it, and I know there's a door that has like an oil-drenched rope holding it shut, and that's where I'm gonna go next when I boot it back up. There's even aspects of, and I'm not quite sure how it plays into the wiring mechanics, but there's sections of the trench that need spool wire, and I've wired them back up, which kind of makes me think of the more modern twist that the recent Resident Evils have been doing, where you board windows up to stop zombies coming in and reinforcing. I'm assuming that slows down the flow of enemies. The combat's actually really quite satisfying. A bit of running, bit of dodge rolling, that sort of thing. You're fighting a mix of dudes with, you know, trench shovel, ET kind of things to melee you with. And so far, the intro gave me a whole suite of weapons and then took them away from me, but like a bolt action rifle in this kind of survival horror setting is actually really cool. You're standing there kind of spamming the reload button to try and rack another bolt and line up that shot before this dude hits you with a bloody shovel. Shotguns, pistols, that sort of stuff. It's really cool. There's a shop kind of reminiscent of Resident Evil 4, just inexplicably sells you stuff on a gamer level. It might be a bit of a misstep because they've got the inventory expansion right there for like $250, very expensive in the game's economy, and so I haven't really engaged with the shop because they're dangling the inventory expansion in front of me. I mean, maybe there's a discussion to be had there on that entire design principle alone, but you know, you're kind of dissuading me from buying anything in your shop. I'm trying to save every cent to buy the epic bag expansion, because anyone that's played one of these games knows how valuable something like that is. But at a certain point, that's just picking at third degree problems. I've had to jump on gun turrets and mow dudes down. I've got an artillery shell in my pocket, and presumably I'm going to be able to launch that somewhere. There's areas cut off that need to be cleared by artillery and rubble. There's sort of undercroft tunnels where I've just unlocked a torch so you can explore that on a timer because there's battery length, and try and find your way through, and there's guys in gas masks breathing deeply in the shadows. So, you know, there's definitely a tense, oppressive component to the way that the game plays, but not strictly terrifying. And yeah, look, I've had a flashback at some point where, thinking back before I was presumably conscripted, so there's a bit of story there. You're very, you know, Gordon Freeman silent protagonist. It's pretty thin on, reading some notes here and there. So yes, it's definitely playing close to its roots, the Resident Evils that we know and love from yesteryear. Yeah, look, at a certain point, I'm just going circular and waffling. Obviously, I'm enamored with this game. I think it's quite brilliant. I've given you some recommendations if you find this interesting. Maybe you've never really played any game like this, but it looks cool to you. Maybe you came in here because of the World War I aesthetic. I don't know. Definitely check out Signalis. Check out the old Resident Evils. They still hold up. Start with Resident Evil 1 Remake from whenever that was, 2003 or something. And then even more recently this year, Crow County comes to mind. That was brilliant. And even the new Alone in the Dark, not quite as old school as this, but I really enjoyed that, expensive as it was. So there you go, you got a little list of homework and things to do before this releases. Yeah, brilliant game, happy to see it, and really hope this is the tip of the spear of like a cascade of these sort of games coming forward in the future. Because I really do. I have a soft spot in my heart for indie, AA, smaller scale, lower budget, stylized throwback survival horror. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.